Maria Passingham from the amazing podcast Equal Parts. Welcome to Podcast Radio.
Thank you very much for having me.
And welcome to anybody watching live on YouTube. I do the chart show on Podcast Radio every Friday, 5 p.m. Count down the top 20 podcasts, the definitive podcast. There's lots of charts of podcasts, but this is the definitive one because it's an amalgamation of all the others. And you can also influence the chart yourself at thepodcastradio.co.uk. And I was involved in a podcast as a guest a few weeks ago, and I met Maria, who was lovely, and I said, hey, you should come on the podcast radio show. So this is the recording for that, and we're going to use the audio on the podcast radio show in about 2 weeks' time. But hey, welcome to it. You look good. Where are we talking to you? In lockdown?
Well, long-term temporarily in South Norfolk, but usually I would be in Manchester.
Because you're from Manchester originally.
No, I'm actually from here. I'm in my childhood home at the moment, but
I read that you started out in Manchester. What's that all about then?
I guess I kind of became a professional podcaster in Manchester.
Right. Okay. So the podcast is called Equal Parts. Mm-hmm. It's a fabulous podcast. We are going to talk about that, but first of all, I want to talk about you.
Okay.
Freelance writer and audio producer.
Yes.
So as a kid, were you messing about with cassettes and stuff? And mind you, am I going way back? Am I going too far back then?
No, I had cassettes.
Okay.
I remember carrying around a little portable cassette player in the garden, listening to the Spice Girls. So I guess I wasn't like somebody who would actually make mixtapes or anything, or sort of play around. I think actually in that machine there was a little recorder, but that it definitely wasn't like a lifelong ambition. I actually wanted to be for a while as a sound engineer,
right?
And I did alongside my GCSEs, I did a BTEC in technical theatre, which was basically like sound and stage and lighting and all that. And that made me realise I didn't want to do that. But I guess better to get that out of the way early.
What was it about that didn't appeal?
I think I'm not sure, something to do with the kind of pressure of like a live audience, not even a live audience that are kind of abstract like in radio, but they're right there. Like if you make a mistake, they can turn around and look at you.
So this was for live shows, kind of.
Yeah, for live theatre
things. Right,
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't know, some things come naturally, and it wasn't natural for me.
Right. And so freelance writer and audio producer. Are you a writer that produces your own work, or are you a producer that writes your own stuff?
Are they different? I think I'm both of those things, but I also do writing outside of audio work. So sometimes features or newsletters and things like that.
I see. But you ended up working for Six Music.
Started out really working for Six Music. Yeah. I got a work experience placement there on Steve Mack's show, which was amazing. Like,
wow.
Honestly, the best time of my life. I stayed at a friend's parents' house in London, and every time I got on the tube to get back to their house, I was just beaming. Like I must have looked really, really mad, but joyfully mad. And then yeah, got some freelance work off the back of that, and loved my time there. But there's budgets, and I was sort of last in, first out sort of thing, I think.
Yeah. Well, you would have learned a lot there. What kind of stuff it open your eyes to?
I mean, research, I think, research for guests and working with talent and putting together little packages. Like I was turning around things, that would be on air sometimes, and later in other placements more so. And sort of show running, notes and or just all of the things that go into making a radio show happen live, basically. And then some of the kind of, preloaded materials too. Yeah, it was totally formative.
Be a great grounding for what you ended up doing, because the production values in Equal Parts are outstanding, the way you put it together.
You.
And we will get onto that. While we're just talking about that though, writer and producer, also host as well. You co-host a new podcast too. Tell me about this one.
Yeah, so this one's called Hope This Finds Me Well. It's an original production by the company that I work for in my day job, which is Edit Audio. We're a production company, and so it's our first in-house production, and so we are kind of three of us are hosting it and producing it and doing everything. Yeah, I'd never really wanted to be, it wasn't a dream to be a host or a presenter, hence the kind of slightly reduced status in equal parts. But Hope This Finds Me Well was kind of like our baby, and so it was only really appropriate that we hosted it, I think. And actually, I've kind of come to love it.
What's
But yeah,
the
I've been
theme for
used to
that
it.
one then? Because Equal
Oh,
Parts,
sorry.
we should say, is about couples meeting stories. It's very
Yes.
romantic. What's Hope This
Yeah.
Finds Me Well?
It's not about that. Although we do touch on love a lot. I mean, it's such a big issue or topic in people's lives. It's about writing to our future selves. So there's a website called Future Me, and you can write letters and schedule them to arrive in the future. And
I've
I've
done
used it
that.
for
I've
a
actually,
decade. Oh, wow!
I've actually done that. I've actually,
Great.
yeah, I've sent myself. It sends you. Is that the one which sends you an email in the future? You put the date and the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you write that, you can either just send it to yourself or you can make it public but anonymous. And the public ones end up on a part of the website, and you can just read through people's innermost thoughts. And it's amazing. And I found myself doing that and think like I wanted to ask people, like what's happened? How does this resolve? And you sound really upset in this moment, or this sounded like an amazing day. And so the concept is that we actually have spoken to some of those people and found out what's happened in the time between, what they remember about that moment in their lives. And it's funny because we start off with these letters which are sometimes really, really heavy and emotional, or sometimes really kind of seemingly light and fluffy. And we just go on these we turn these amazing corners, and we just like found it such amazing human connection, which is kind of also what Equal Parts is about. So I think
Yes.
that I'm working out that's what I love to tell stories about.
What a great idea to find stories. What a great
Yeah,
place to
I
find
know.
real
It's just sitting
stories,
there.
original stories. Yeah. So what got you started in podcasting then?
It was essentially because sort of coming out of Six Music and doing other placements in music radio, which is what I thought I wanted to work in. It was essentially that opportunities dried up and I couldn't afford to work for free forever. And so I suppose ironically, I decided to work for myself for free, but I decided to just make the opportunities. So if someone wasn't going to give me a job or give me a shift at a freelance thing, then I would just show them what I could actually do. I knew I had the skills. So I was like, well, I'll just make something and see. So I did that with a social enterprise in London called Library of Things, which is an amazing place where the community can borrow like really bulky things or really expensive things or whatever, and sort of co-own them. And so that was a great community that had loads of really cool stories. So I was like, cool, I'll partner with them, bring those stories out into audio format, kind of as like a bit of a trial to see if I could, and to see if they liked what I produced and how that kind of relationship would work. And it did really well.
So
then I
that
decided
was
to move
getting
on.
to the bottom of the stories of why people were borrowing things from the Library of Things.
Yeah, so why they were borrowing, and how it had kind of brought them closer to their community, or in fact, like even created a community. It's the original one was in West Norwood. It's now moved to Crystal Palace, and in West Norwood, it was just there was a bit of a kind of dearth of like engagement. It was just people kind of getting on. I suppose like in a lot of places, people just getting on with their lives separately, and so this center, it was literally two shipping containers, one which was a kind of social space and one which was a storage space. And so people could go there and borrow things, but also learn how to use them, and also connect with other people who were in there borrowing things, and realize, oh, we used the waffle maker last week, did your kids enjoy that? We're going to use so and so this week. And so it really connected people. So like that was just, I saw that as like, well, someone should be documenting this.
Yeah. So you've got a nose for a good story. That's what it's all about. No, really, because
Yeah,
all
perhaps.
the great podcasts, when the production values of yours reminds me very much of Wondery or This American Life, that kind
I'll
of
take
thing.
it.
They are.
Thank you.
They're put together just as well as that, and they do that. They take people's real stories and go as deep as they can, and try to tell the story in a creative way. And
Yeah.
your shows, you've managed to get praise from The Guardian, from the AV Club. Did they find you, or did you hassle them?
Some and some, I think.
Okay.
I mean, I never slack with press efforts. I think that, you shouldn't just assume you put something out and people will find it and love it. Like that's, we all know how big and sort of empty, well, full and empty the internet is. So definitely some putting it out there, but also when you work with something like Library of Things, like who are their own enterprise and have, their staff are working just as hard to get grants and to get partnerships with massive brands who can loan them the things. And it's like there is some sort of attention there already, so it's kind of like it's using the momentum that's already gathering, and then once you get some, other places see it. So so it's hard work, and then let natural progression happen, I think.
Well, let's talk about equal parts then.
Sure.
The decision to, you mentioned this earlier, to leave yourself out, like obviously, because I've been one of the guests on, Julie and I we told our meeting story, and we were the guests on it. And of course, you interview us, you ask questions, and we give answers. Mm-hmm. But then you take yourself out and just have the guests tell their stories.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to do it that way?
Well, when I started it, it was necessity that someone had to kind of host it and frame it, right? And I was there, and I was making it.
And you're good at that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't think I was natural at the beginning. I think I'm getting better. But I didn't want to be in it more than absolutely necessary. I didn't want to be cutting in with something to distract and just for my ego sort of thing. So I felt like the point is that these couples are telling their stories in an entwined way, and if to have a third not involved voice would just feel wrong to me. And also I kind of lifted it from another podcast.
Did you? Which one?
Song Exploder.
Right. Well, there's no shame in that. I mean, all the greatest musicians will say that, they were influenced by, whatever their influences were along the way. And I see no reason why podcasting can't have the same.
No, I agree. I mean, how many people have, just a interview format, that's like, it's not a unique style, but
exactly.
It works.
Yeah.
So I saw how they did it, and I imagine that Rishikesh must ask these amazing questions because the answers that he gets are so detailed. But by removing himself, it allows the musician to kind of show the progression of their song uninterrupted. And also it's very helpful as an editor because you can really move things around and no one knows.
And do you record yourself and the guest on separate tracks so that you can't talk over them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I record all my guests separately, which actually through lockdown has been a silver lining because even if I do interrupt, I can get rid of that. It's not like we're in the same room together.
Yeah, it's isolated.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even record myself if I didn't need to, but that's the way technology works.
And the decision to have the couples, for those who haven't heard Equal Parts, each one of the couple tells their story, but the other partner isn't there with them. And you were very strict with us that we shouldn't talk before and get our story straight. It should go on our own memory of how Julie and I met.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to do it that way?
Because I think that's where the charm lies. Because if you're both telling something that's kind of rehearsed or that you've discussed, you're going to end up using the same turn of phrase or focusing on the same details. And I like the moments when someone tells me a story that the other person hasn't even thought to bring in, or when someone misremembers something. Like in season 1, this couple agreed that they met at a jukebox in a pub and that they kind of connected over a song they were choosing, but they each remembered a different song. Like if I recorded them either together or they had spoken about it beforehand, I'm sure that wouldn't have happened. And that's one of, I think, the most charming moments in the whole season is that discrepancy. These stories are so important to people's lives, but also over time details change, and so I kind of want that to be organic.
Yeah, I think with ours, we had the story pretty much the same, but I didn't mention that our first date was at a Chinese restaurant. I mentioned getting Julie's phone number, but not the reason why.
And Julie didn't mention about the mishap with the wedding car or the not wedding car.
Oh, she didn't mention any of that?
She didn't mention that.
She
mentioned seeing you outside, but she didn't mention sort of the aftermath.
Right, that we'd nobbled the wrong car. We went to a wedding, or I went to a wedding that I wasn't invited to, and my friends and I sorted out the couple's car with toilet paper and it was a white car, and we wrote on it with lipstick and stuff. And then when we left, we realised we'd done the wrong car. Someone went to a wedding in a Hillman Hunter and got the car, and I still don't know which car it was. So tell me about the artwork then, because that's fascinating as well. So each couple comes on and they tell their individual story. You edit them together and make it into this wonderful thing that is the Equal Parts podcast. And then artwork appears with the podcast that matches the story. Tell me about that then.
So I guess this was another thing that I sort of slightly lifted from another podcast.
That's fine.
Criminal do have a piece of original artwork for every episode, although it's always created by the same person, I believe. And I wanted to. I mean, there's several reasons. Firstly, I think because I keep some level of distance from the couples, I don't share photos of them on social media or whatever. They're just kind of these figures in the podcast. So I wanted to be able to post about them and use something interesting visually that didn't have to mean a photograph. So it's useful for that. But also I think it just adds a really lovely texture to the story when someone's interpretation that is only from the audio. I'm not explaining this very well. So I do an edit and I find an illustrator who I think the style kind of matches the story. Maybe that's because the palette they use kind of represents the landscape, or maybe it's because it's really joyful and the story is like super, super upbeat. I get some kind of good vibe. And I just send them the audio and they just come up with whatever. I don't prescribe them anything. They come up with whatever they want, whatever it speaks to them. And I just love them all. And I think that it's a lovely present for the couple when the episode comes out to see how their story has been interpreted. And, maybe they look wildly different to how they actually look in real life, but I don't really care about that. And it's also just lovely for listeners who have no idea what the couple look like to have some kind of representation, I suppose, or visualization.
Yeah, no, it is really nice. We really like our one.
Yeah, and I love your
one. What surprised me was Julie said to me, because you didn't find me, you found Julie. You had no idea I was hosting a podcast radio countdown show. This was just pure fluke. Julie said to me, she said, we've been asked to go on a podcast and talk about how we met. And I went, well, we've got a good meeting story, so that might be fun. Yeah, so say yes. How did you find us and how do you find couples?
Yeah, that was so bizarre. So season 1 I used, it was a bit of an experiment and I didn't know how the season was going to play out. So I essentially just used the people immediately around me. I used friends, I used family, I used colleagues. And then when you realize you've done a number of those, you've kind of used up everyone who has an interesting story, is prepared to talk about it, has the time to talk about it. So I kind of had to expand. So season 2 is nearly all strangers to me. There are a couple of people that I do know. And it's honestly social media, because people love to talk about how they met their partners. And so I search for hashtags, I search for phrases, and then I, sort of just reach out to a lot of people and see who bites. And sometimes I know a lot about the story. Sometimes people write a long post and sometimes they just say, I think Julie's post was very limited. I think it was just like, we've been together this long. We met on the dance floor at a wedding or something. I thought, that could be interesting. So then, even talking to you, I don't even know what I'm going to get. Which is great, actually.
Wow. And it's kind of cosmic because I didn't deliberately set this date up or look at the date. Today was just a day I had free that I could record this, and I record interviews on Mondays and Wednesdays. But today is actually the 22nd of February, and that is the date that Julie and I met.
I know. When I realised that, I was really astounded. And it is perfect. Yeah, cosmic synergy.
Yeah. You did your parents in the first season.
I did.
How did that feel?
Well, I'll be totally honest with you. They were the season finale, but they were also the first interview I ever recorded by myself, even before Library of Things podcast.
Right.
Essentially, I wanted to know whether I had the editing skills.
Okay.
So I recorded them, and I just thought, what can I ask them both to talk about that they both have a shared experience of and will be able to go into some detail about? So I just decided, like, it wasn't a concept for a show or anything. I just decided, okay, I'll get them to tell me the story because I knew it was kind of interesting.
So it was kind of an exercise then.
It was totally an exercise, yeah. And then when I realized that I could edit that, then I went to do Library of Things podcast. And then when I came back and I thought, actually, you know what? I kind of like that concept. And I had some other friends who had great stories. I thought I could build something around this. So when I eventually came back to make it into a real episode, I didn't want to get them to do it again on I didn't want to get new tape, even though the quality might not have been quite there. But it felt disingenuous to sort of stage it. So I had to just reshape the episode, really. And my mum I'd got about an hour recording from her. My dad is a very succinct, concise man. He gave me about 15 minutes. I had to really use as much of his material as possible and really tone down my mum. But I mean, that's also quite representative of their relationship. So, yeah. But it was, I kind of didn't want to put that one out because it felt too, I mean, literally close to home, but also maybe a bit too kind of convenient. Like it wasn't like real kind of reporting. Do you see what I mean? Like a bit lazy maybe. But it was a good story and I needed an 8th episode. So,
so they became the season finale.
Sure, yeah.
And what have you learned from talking to so many couples about their meeting story? I mean, is there a common denominator through them all or something that comes up a lot?
You know what, there is. And it's funny because it's something that we are told the opposite of. We're always told that relationships aren't easy and love isn't easy and you have to work at it. And I think, I mean, I've never been in love, but I imagine that is true. And you do have to work through things. But I would say 90% of the couples I have interviewed have said at some point, it was so easy. So I think, like, if you're feeling that about somebody, you know that that's a great sign. And it has surprised me how that has come up time and time again. And I didn't expect that.
Wow. You say you haven't found true love. You've never been in love. So an odd person to decide to do this.
Perhaps, yeah.
Do you think, if we're trying to get all Freudian here, that it could be the fact that you haven't found the right person yet that has inspired you to talk to people who have?
I think it's nice and it's reassuring for me, to think, oh, I'm sure there is someone out there for me and one day I'll have my own story. I don't think it's like a direct sort of response, but it has been lovely to just surround myself in people's real love stories when I don't have one going on myself.
And also see just what dumb luck it is that people actually find each other. So
totally dumb luck.
That's got to be inspirational. So you're like, what am I doing wrong? Well, nothing. It's just dumb luck. You know?
I mean, even people who, to an extent engineer it, people who go on dating sites and apps and, get set up and things, like, in a way you would say that's not dumb luck because, they're actually looking. But, like, still, it's not just going to be the first person you connect with like that, and people still have ups and downs and sometimes really awful first impressions that then they come back to. So I mean, I guess I just have to wait for it to happen. It's fine.
And then you'll be on equal parts. You'll have to do your own story.
Well, perhaps that will be like the grand finale forever. Yeah, that will be the way I'll go out.
When they make the movie of your life based on this, because there's a movie in this. There's clearly a movie in this that, you haven't found love yet. You're making this podcast and getting people's stories, or even a TV series. And the grand finale is you find love of your own. I mean, that's got to be the perfect Hollywood ending, hasn't it?
Yeah, but I'm not. I mean, it would be nice, but I'm not like, that's not my only, driver in life. So I don't really care if that Hollywood ending doesn't happen or it doesn't happen until I'm 50. Like, I'm fine.
Who's been your favourite meeting story so far?
Oh, you can't ask me that. They're my babies.
I can't. I mean, it was cheeky, but are you going to stick your neck out on one?
I'm not.
Okay, fair enough.
Every time I do an interview, I come away from it with my cheeks burning from smiling and thinking, oh my gosh, these people were amazing. And I'm already thinking how I'm going to weave it together. And then just this weekend, I had to edit one. I edited one, and I wasn't really in a working mood, but I sat down and did it. And halfway through, I was just like, oh, this is amazing. These people are incredible. So I think it's kind of like, every time I get a new one, that becomes my immediate favorite. And
yeah.
And then when it's released, again, I kind of get a second burst of life on it. But no, they're all great.
They are great. It's called Equal Parts. Maria Passingham, thank you very much for asking us to be a part of it, because our meeting stories on there. And thanks for being on here too. You've got the new podcast, and then what's next?
Who knows? Probably a third season of Equal Parts.
Yes.
Potentially. And probably some more in-house work for Edit Audio, for maybe more originals there. But we're kind of in a sort of pitching stage at the moment, so we'll see.
And you've also got the hosting on Hope This Finds Me Well, so you've got that going too.
So Hope This Finds Me Well, there's several more episodes to come out.
And if we want to find out more about you,
I guess Twitter, Maria Passingham, Instagram if you want to see the artwork for the show, m.passingham, I believe. equalpartspodcast.co.uk has an About Me section. It's all there. You can just Google me. I'm famous.
Maria, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.